All right. Welcome, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. It's 6:02, and I know some of you probably still trying to get home and feed kids and do other things as well. So want to start on time and try to end relatively on time, somewhere around 7:30. Welcome to those of you here in person to the Live Oak Library Annex. Yay, this is sort of we have a soft launch on this space, so it's not officially done. There's still a few elements to complete, including like a metal lattice on the outside. There's a few touch-up items. I think someone was noticing here who was early that there's not plugs yet in some of the floor spaces. But we are able to start using the space and enjoy it. And I'll be meeting with the library director. We have a new library director, actually, for the county, and they'll be coming in and making the space their own in the near future. And right now, Parks is kind of doing the interim management of just keeping an eye on the space, since they, of course, are manage the swim center and have staff here to just keep to look out. We do have a hybrid meeting tonight. As you can see, we've got some folks joining us online as well as in person. So I'm going to go through a few slides talking about Live Oak specific issues. I try to rotate this meeting throughout the first district, which is really the middle part of the county. And so when we talk about Live Oak, it's really everything from kind of the Santa Cruz Gardens and Dominican straight down to the coastline and including the Pleasure Point area as well. And so, yeah, I'm happy to take questions at the end about anything throughout the first district of the county, but the slides that I prepared tonight are really going to focus in on Live Oak issues, and particularly some streetscape improvements that I'm looking at and want to share with you and get your input on, as well as some issues related to parks. So let's dive right in. First, I'm just, again, overview. I'll talk a little bit about some of where we're at with the county budget, opportunities and constraints, the projects currently going on, issues just specifically related to streetscape maintenance of our medians and sidewalk planters and sidewalks. Talk about more in the lake and the recently released monarch butterfly habitat management plan there. Talk about East Cliff Walkway, and I'll talk about the potential Schwann Lake connection, an old redevelopment project that we're looking at ways to potentially pick up again. And then, like I said, there'll be plenty of time for any questions at the end. All right, so county budget update. On June 4th, we adopted our $1.12 billion county budget. It is a difficult year for the county as we look at really trying to respond to a lot of the past disasters. FEMA still owes us $100 million. And, you know, we're trying to manage a wide range of services from mental health to planning services, actually try to get some of the housing that's so desperately needed in our area built. And of course, managing our streets. Some good news within that budget. There is a specific amount of money set aside for East Cliff Drive bike and pedestrian safety improvements, as well as money coming back to the district from transient occupancy taxes. Those are the taxes generated when people stay in our hotels and vacation rentals like Airbnbs or VRBOs. And that's some money specifically available for the kinds of improvements that we'll talk about tonight. Now, that was the preliminary budget. On September 10th, the Board of Supervisors will review and approve a final budget. Why the difference? Well, because so much of our budget is dependent on what happens at the state level. That wasn't finalized until June 15th. And so that's why we need to come back, review, and finalize our own county budget based on what they did up there in Sacramento. Another piece that's been pending is Measure K. Measure K is a half-cent sales tax that voters approved back during the March primary election. It has been held up in a lawsuit, and we think we are close to a settlement agreement with the person who brought that suit, and we'll be able to begin allocating that money by September 10th. That's fingers crossed. We can reach a settlement. If not, we'd have to continue to hold it in reserve until the lawsuits settle. But if we are able to start programming it on September 10th, that'd be $7 million in revenues for the first year, right? It passed in March, and then we start collecting it. So we expect $7 million in 2024, 2025 budget year would be collected, and then $10 million per year in preceding years. And roughly speaking, out of that money, the board has said, well, let's say that for sure, $4 million will be used. 1 million for parks, 1 million for road repair, 1 million for housing, and 1 million for homelessness. And so particularly that money for road repair and parks, even if we assume that, a fifth of that specifically is coming back to the first district, because there are 5 districts in the county, that does give us some money to work on high priority projects for parks and road repairs within the district. So stuff that's been going on. Of course, we've had the resurfacing on East Cliff and Portola. This is what the road looked like back in 2021. This is what it looks like today. We were able to, address some of that major alligator cracking that was happening. This was actually one of the roads that was, I would say, in the worst condition in the county, given how much usage it gets. About 15,000 cars a day use East Cliff, Portola. And the pavement condition index was way down there in the 30s. So it was great that we had the opportunity to get this done. The project really rocked to the top of the priority list because of the need to do some repairs on the sewer line that's under the street. Now, there's just a few final touch-ups there. Will note in the photo that there was a street tree. Now there's not a street tree. That was a mistake that sanitation made when they were putting the street back together, and we will get it fixed this fall. We're waiting till the fall and the sort of rainy season begins before we plant those trees to make sure they have the best chance of survival. And so there's 2 planters left that we'll address there for sure come later this year. Other things that you should be aware of that are happening with streets and roads in the first district. This is actually a City of Santa Cruz project. They've been talking about updating the bridge over the harbor for many years, and they think they are close to actually beginning this project. So they currently have an RFP out, if you will, or are accepting bids from contractors on this project. Those bids are due August 29th. The project is estimated to cost $50 million and would completely replace that bridge. They are talking about some substantial improvements when that happens. So the bike lanes, which if you have ridden it today, are narrow and dangerous, would be increased to 6-foot bike lanes. The sidewalk would be increased to 7.5 feet on the ocean side. And instead of that solid concrete barrier on the ocean side, it would become a barrier rail, so you'd be able to actually see the water as you go across the bridge. Now, if you're reading closely there, it says estimated schedule fall 24 to 26. The city has assured me that they don't actually break ground this fall, that it will be more like early to middle of next year. I told them great, because of course that's about when we expect the SoCal Drive project and the Highway 1 project that I'm sure you're currently getting stuck in to wrap up. So those are both expected to be complete spring of 2025. And so hopefully things will already be moving on those other 2 major cross-county routes before the city undertakes this project. They also said that they will ensure that eastbound traffic remains open during the majority of their project. So we'll see how bids come back on this. And this is just where the project is at the moment. The rail trail, the segments 8 and 9, also 2 segments that really impact our district, well, particularly segment 9. You can see actually here in this photo, this is just outside the swim center, and segment 9 goes up to 17th Avenue. The city is in charge of delivering these segments, and currently this project is expected to break ground fall 2026, 2027. They are also dealing with some potential cost overruns on this. You can see the engineering estimate there, $36 million. It's possible it's as much as $15 million more than that. We're currently trying to get some federal grants to make this project possible. Also, sidebar, at the Regional Transportation Commission, we are undertaking the passenger rail environmental impact report, and that's looking at the concept study for that project. We expect that to be done early next year as well. All right, now to get back specifically to Live Oak and streets. I hear consistently from a lot of folks that concerned that the district looks shabby and that we need to do more to invest in just the general appearance of our community. And I completely agree. And there's a number of overlapping issues here, but one of them is just that the fund that we have for streetscape maintenance was established back when a lot of the Live Oak sidewalks and medians were built back in the 90s. And the rate for that was never increased. I think it's about $3 for a single family home today. Of course, over that time, basically the purchasing power of that money has fallen by half. And so that then particularly in COVID, we lost our contract with the folks who did the general maintenance of these medians. And that's why it became more of an obvious issue. I hear from many of you every day in the spring when the weeds grow. We tried to just increase the rate that folks pay for this just to match inflation. That measure didn't pass, and so we've got to look at other creative solutions. This purple area shows that we really are actually talking about a fairly large area. The county service area 9E that manages this goes all the way over to Park Avenue by Cabrillo. Includes a large section of SoCal Drive, as well as all through Live Oak and Pleasure Point. So what alternatives do we have? Well, I mean, you did see, I think that Public Works went out there and mowed most of these weeds, right? And they're able to do a basic level of maintenance, of really safety focused. A lot of what they didn't do was the sidewalk planters on the side. And we're still trying to figure out how to deal with the street trees as they get larger. But as far as just trying to generally beautify the area, the proposal is to create and adopt a planter program. This is something that's been done in a lot of communities and would be a way to stretch our public dollars further. So as I mentioned, we do have some money from the transient occupancy taxes that come back to the district and that we could use on this kind of stuff. Now, that's money that we could spend on anything. And so if we're spending it on median and planter maintenance, we're taking that away from a park project, for example. So how do we make that money go as far as possible? An adopt a planter program would be a way to do that. I have had a lot of folks reach out to me saying, hey, no one's come out here and done the weed whacking on this. Can I do it myself? Or can I plant something in this particular planter? In fact, we've got a couple examples already. The Pocket Park at the end of 17th here, folks volunteered to start planting that and spreading some mulch out in the area. You might have noticed Pleasure Point Park on the East Cliff Walkway there at the end. Some folks volunteered to plant in that area. And so really we're looking at, okay, could we extend that program to any sidewalk planter in the district? Lots of other communities have done this, including Los Gatos. They have 30 planters that have been adopted, Morgan Hill, and some other cities throughout California. Basically, it would work by just, you could choose a planter that you were interested in adopting. Just reach out to us, my office, confirm that it's available, register your contact information, then you prepare the ground. And we want to provide some incentive and some public money to really make this work. And so we would, the plants would be purchased by the county as well as any other resources like compost, mulch, and a little acknowledgement plaque. And you would just volunteer the time, maintenance, and ensure that whatever is planted there is not going to grow out into the roadway or into the sidewalk. So I'm curious, actually, would any of you be interested in a program like this? Would any of you want to adopt a median, or I should say a sidewalk planter? Yeah. Okay. All right, great. All right, that's a reasonable amount of interest. I'll love it. We'll keep moving forward with the program. And again, we'll probably look at launching this here in the next month or two. We really want to make sure that folks are able to get things planted. Well,
seems like a lot of maintenance for little plots, a lot of touching.
well, ultimately, we will know, I mean, just who has adopted which median, so we just have to register them. And if folks don't maintain the median, they say they were going to, I mean, which is really all the worst thing that could happen, it reverts back to the way it was. Then we're not gonna give, you can't adopt another median, right? Or another planter. So it's really more of, if you do a good job, you can adopt more, we'll keep giving you plants. If not, then it's been fun.
But if not, you've spent some money on plants and now half the town has planters and half the town has weeds.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if your half the town has weeds, I mean, we'll come out there and cut them if it's a safety issue. And again, we can spend parks money on planters, right? We can find a way to do basic maintenance. There are just generally trade-offs. And so this is a way to make things look better than just cutting the weeds. And try to generally improve the look of our community. Yeah, sure.
Irrigation?
Oh, I'm sorry. So there are some places with irrigation, but I mean, I think in general, the assumption should be that we're not going to irrigate the plants because, I mean, so yeah, some of long-term, that's probably a better assumption to choose drought-resistant plants. There is some irrigation along some of the old redevelopment street trees. I don't think anyone has gone and checked that recently. So, I mean, it could be something where we see whether or not the old drip is working.
Watering can works real well.
Yeah.
Fill it up, compound it.
Right. Yeah. And again, I mean, the idea is to be a little bit strategic here and try to plant in the fall so that plants can enjoy the growing season, get deep roots, and then, if they have to hibernate during the really hot part of the summer, well.
Curious if you have like what are the trade-offs versus like buying a few plants for people who ask to adopt one versus the money paying parks to cut weeds and maintain together? Is there a trade-off number? Like we measure those?
Like how much we're
Like
paying parks?
If we put that money in there,
Mhm.
right, we take it away from someone else. How much does it cost to maintain, to make the weeds not be knee-high?
Yeah. So we were spending about $40,000 for the whole area on just cutting the weeds and trimming trees. It was proven not really to be enough. We estimate that the district that the area needs about $90,000 worth of regular work per year. And so, like I said, we could take that money from our $75,000 of transient occupancy taxes to cover the difference. That's, take $40,000 from that. No, of course, that would be work that was, yeah.
So what do you think the savings is with 30 grand? The adopted program?
Hard to say without seeing how much,
Various, like what the trade-offs then.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's also just the beautification element. We're not going out and planting and caring for new plants with the current program, right? We're just trying to do basic maintenance. So trying to help other people to do that. All right, and there is some opportunities potentially for similar type of plantings to happen around Morin Lake as well. So the county recently completed, it hasn't been, the final version hasn't been adopted, but the monarch butterfly habitat management plan was updated, looking at ways to improve the monarch butterfly habitat that's around Morin Lake. For those of you who don't know, this is actually it's the second largest overwintering site for monarch butterflies in our county. And it can host anywhere from 17% to about 30% of all the butterflies that come to our county in the winter. And statewide, it's also very significant as well, can host as much as 5% of all the butterflies that overwinter statewide. And of course, not all of those sites are actually in public hands. And so this is important because this is a site that is both publicly controlled and significant to the butterflies. The study was done in concert with looking at, really the idea is to look at the entire Moran Lake habitat, including the lagoon itself. But this is a critical piece because it affects the trees as well as a lot of neighboring homeowners. So right now, the idea is to improve drainage along the park that will ultimately then improve the lagoon habitat and to plant some trees that will ultimately support the monarch butterfly habitat, mostly closer to the lagoon there. And there's also an opportunity to plant some nectar sources. A big reason why butterflies come to this site is because they have both the blooming eucalyptus as well as the blooming English ivy throughout the winter. Of course, we're also looking at opportunities to improve just the general look and feel of the park. As I said, from that Measure K money, about at least $200,000 of that will come back to the first district. And this park is high on my list of priorities because the parking lot needs resurfacing, the bathroom needs painting, and there's a lot that we can do just to improve the look and feel of this area. Yeah, Patty?
Now, we published our issues and concerns memo. And one of the things that came back in feedback was the 100 new eucalyptus trees that have been planted and serious concerns about fire maintenance, fire hazards. Also, there are now 4 houses that have been destroyed, basically, probably down to their structure by the eucalyptus trees falling during storms. Is that really good management to continue planting eucalyptus with the disasters that are happening on the other end?
Yeah.
What is the cost to the county of the 4 houses that are having to basically be rebuilt?
Great question. So first of all, I'd point out that the county does not have sort of absolute control over this site, right? I mean, we have had to come to an agreement with Fish and Wildlife and the Coastal Commission about how to manage this important environmentally sensitive area. And so that's why we have to do a monarch butterfly habitat management plan at all, right? Otherwise, we could just say, yeah, this tree is a danger, cut that down, cut that one down.
I work at the Nature Conservancy. I'm totally in support of habitat,
Right.
but aren't there alternatives to eucalyptus trees that maybe match the significance of building the habitat versus trees that cause structure damage?
The short answer is no. Because while butterflies do like Monterey cypress, they like eucalyptus trees a heck of a lot more because they actually flower in the winter and they have a larger, more open canopy. So that on cold winter days, they don't get sort of trapped in a certain spot because they're too cold and don't have the energy to move. So this is what, I mean, again, this is just what the butterfly experts have said. Now, I know we have, there is the issue with homeowners, right? Completely understand and sympathetic to that. And so, we had a meeting just, what was it, a week, 2 weeks ago? Hey, sure. I wish it was run better myself, and wish the parks had told me a little bit ahead of time what they were thinking of for that meeting. But I was glad we did get into a little bit more of a conversational format with it. But the main follow-up that I took out of that meeting was that we do need to drill down into what trees can be topped in order to really make sure what trees that are adjacent to homes can be topped so that they are much safer, right? I mean, can we reduce the height from 160 feet to 50 feet? And will that still be enough to protect the habitat? So those are kind of the limits that we need to look at as we balance between the needs for safety for neighbors and habitat for butterflies. Does that answer your question?
Do you have the cost that should speak up? The cost for the 4 houses that got destroyed, what did that come out of the county budget?
I don't have the cost off the top of my head. No. Yeah.
pretty good. Like measure, you know, here like, hey, we're gonna plant $100,000 worth of trees, but
Mhm.
last year we paid way more than 100,000.
Mhm. Sure.
I mean, one house is two things. We should know them.
Yeah, well, to be determined. The trees that we are talking about planting are, of course, largely further away from the homes, as you can see by the map, and closer to the lagoon area. And a lot of some of these could, because they're serving more of a windbreak function, could be more mid-rise Monterey cypress and other native plantings. Yeah.
I think last time we talked about being able to download the report, they were missing appendices from the report. Is that now all
Mhm.
up? I have not been able to get a copy of the report and with the appendix and everything now. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my only
Happy
request.
to help you get a link to the full report.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing the plan implemented, and especially, and I hear you, Patty, and we might be able to get some extra Monterey cypress in there because that's what the butterflies used for all the years that we didn't have eucalyptus. But I'm really seeing this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mono, that this is going to be one of those adaptive management situations where we're going to try something, see how it works. And generally, nature tells you if it's working or not. And if it's not, then you have to try something different. So I'm hoping that this will go forward and to see what happens. I don't ever think about planning in terms of hoping or dreaming, but in this case, I think the science is good, and I'm looking forward to parks in the county being adaptive to how this program continues. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
It's Betty, right? Betty? Yeah, Patty, I'm sorry. I can answer your question. I don't know why you didn't answer it. Well, all the houses that had the trees fall on them filed a claim with the county and they just denied the claim. So they haven't, that hasn't cost them anything.
Christina, can you grab the
In regards to last meeting we had about the trees, was there any sort of discourse after the meeting with the consultancy or anyone about amending the plan and looking more at safety versus, you know, literally there was just like a paragraph just dedicated to safety in that plan. Is there any sort of thought to kind of diving deeper into that, the safety aspect of it?
100%. Yep. As I said, as I had a conversation with the consultant after that meeting, and we're continuing the conversation with park staff, can we look at, again, how do we, you know, how much safer will the trees be if they're topped from their current height to 50 feet, or, you know, and what is that height that they should be topped to? Is it 50 feet? Is it 70 feet? And then if that happens, does it negatively impact the butterfly habitat, or is it still fine at 50 feet? And so we're going to look at sort of, you know, we're talking about part of that study that does LiDAR for the area to see where the, you know, general height and massing of the trees is, and then a flow study to see how the primary monarch butterfly roosting habitat, which is kind of at the back of the sanitation district facility here, would be impacted, you know, based on how high we cut these trees here, kind of along Placer Street.
Can I just follow up one second?
Sure.
Sorry. Is that, sorry.
Is that process, you think, we know that cutting seasons between October and April. We're rapidly approaching October, so another rainy season. So do you think there's any hope that trees are going to be getting topped before October?
I'm hopeful and trying to make it happen as soon as possible to reduce risk.
Sorry, more logistics question. So this plan is supposed to go in front of the council and they're going to vote it into action, right? So all this feedback that is coming about the plan and the safety,
Mhm.
will that be reflected in a new plan or this plan at some point? And will we be able to see that before it gets voted into or put in front of the city? Or,
So
sorry, the
County Board of
County board.
Supervisors,
Yes, that's
right?
the one. I don't know what they're called.
You know, I haven't talked to any of my colleagues about how they feel about this plan, but I think probably you know, they'll look to me and say, hey, it's your problem. So you go figure it out with the constituents who this impacts, right? So I mean, my plan would be my approach would be, hey, let's make sure we get the plan right before approving it. So I don't want to like approve the plan and then go do another round. I want to make sure that before we finalize this plan, that we have some of the elements that you guys are
Yes,
asking
I think
for
there's, yeah, we have
integrated,
until August. I'm sorry, go ahead.
including you know, a little more than one sentence about the safety, right? More like finding you know, where the average of safety and habitat you know, or optimization of those two factors. And then also looking at you know, what the schedule of maintenance is going to be.
Okay, that's great. We have until August 16th, I think, to submit our feedback.
Mhm.
And then we just don't want it to be like we submit our feedback, nothing changes, they vote on it. And then, like,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
love to see all that stuff reflected in the plan officially before it gets voted.
Totally. And I hear you, and they is me.
Thank
so-
you. I know we've said a lot about it, but
Gotcha.
thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
Sorry.
sure.
I still don't understand how the plan can be presented without the map, like. These trees, the science is good, that's great, they give butterflies a home, but they destroy our community's houses.
Mhm.
$100,000 in trees takes out 2 million in houses, like, the plan has to have map, right?
Mhm.
Are you gonna have to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid point, right? Is I mean, how much is it going to cost to you know, as we look at where the optimization between safety and habitat is, then how much does
I don't even think it's safe. It's like, the county has a budget crisis, and then you're gonna do something that's gonna destroy homeowners' homes, like. Hopefully they won't be in them, but like. You
Well-
have to take accountability for the cost of the house. Like, you can deny claims so long until there's gonna probably be loss, right?
yes?
So,
Well, so we didn't plant I mean, this was all planted back in like, I mean, I don't know exactly what year, but like the 30s, right? I mean, it was a wood lot. And so we've been managing it to, you know, the agreement that we have with Fish and Wildlife and Coastal, right? The previous habitat
sure.
management plan. And we're trying to do that in a way that also reduces risk. Now, obviously, the climate changes that we're seeing have really accelerated that. We never had hurricane force winds in this area before, right? We never had double cyclones hit our county. And so of course that has changed, or I should say, increased the urgency of how we think about this as well. And so I'm sure we will be crunching that math and figure out how we pay for this. We can't go in and clear cut this all, right? I mean, because it's our other state and federal partners wouldn't allow us to.
I don't see a proposal for.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I think your plan was to go through the presentation and then do a question and answer. Can we go back to that?
Yeah. I was taking some questions on these various topics because there's some good feedback, but I agree we've talked about this a fair amount. I'm happy to continue later. All right. Want to talk about another important piece of the district, which is the East Cliff Walkway. I've heard from many of you and also agree with this, that, hey, the old striping is faded. No one knows what's going on. Meanwhile, we've had more and more e-bikes. That's causing more conflict. It's just become increasingly well used. So here's what the existing conditions look like. As you can see, faded striping. But then also the current configuration is the street, a bike lane, that dark line here in this sort of diagram is the curb, and then keep right, and then it actually moves to decomposed granite on the side. So there's a better picture of the diagram. So this is option, this is the current existing conditions. And so as we look at improving this area, we could do the most basic improvement possible, which is just redo all the paint so it's more obvious and hopefully easier for people to navigate. A second option would be to try to more obviously separate bikes and pedestrians, particularly on the walking portion. So still, because right now, as you can see, it just says keep right, keep right. We could try and specify this is where the bikes go on the walkway, and this part is for pedestrians. In doing that, we could also have more compacted, decomposed granite closer to the split rail fence and the coast. The current permit that we have for that does say that we will have a permeable surface there, but we could compact it a little bit harder so that folks with strollers or wheelchairs are more inclined to use that space rather than just wanting to be on the asphalt. Another option would be to actually try to get all of the bikes into the street. This is and put the contraflow lane sort of on the inside of the street there, keep the current bike lane where it is, and the street would become, for vehicles, would become narrower. In fact, as you can see here, the car window hanging out over into the bike lane, it might in fact become too narrow for cars. But in many parts of the world, this is exactly how things operate. If you've ever been to a European village and driven down cobblestone streets, rather than the street being for cars with everyone else as guests, it's actually for everyone, and the car is the guest. And so we could reduce the speed limit to 5 miles per hour, or even 10 miles per hour, and just say that cars need to go slowly, and then keep the sidewalk for pedestrians. So I'm actually interested in a flash poll here between option A, option B, and option C, what you guys think. Option A and option B would be pretty easy to do, and option C would take a little bit more time because it's a little bit more novel in our area, but could still be done. So who would like to see option A, the existing conditions maintained and refreshed? It's the same, yeah. Okay. Who likes option B? Right? And who likes option C? Okay. All right, so B narrow lead, and then C, and then A. Yeah.
So you talked about taking the speed limit down.
Mm-hmm.
How about we do that for bicycles? Just put a speed limit for the bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
I e-bike, but I travel at the same speed I used to travel on my regular bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like looking at everything. But I'm regularly passed there by people going well past the speed that cars are going.
Mm-hmm.
So if we put a speed limit now, there's no enforcement, but at least it's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, particularly for the portion where bikes are using the shared sidewalk. Yeah.
Is there a conversation about e-bikes today or at some point, or I'm sorry, I'm just stepping into this late, but
Mm-hmm.
it does feel like a thing that people are talking about. And I feel
It certainly is a thing. Yeah.
Right turn here.
I'm happy to comment on that briefly. So it is a thing that we're talking about. In fact, the Board of Supervisors, I just worked to make it so that e-bikes are not allowed on sidewalks in general. This is a mixed use pathway. So East Cliff is sort of a category of its own. But in general, yeah, we have banned e-bikes from sidewalks, except in cases where there's not a bike lane, and it would be dangerous to ride in the street, and even only then if there's no pedestrians present. So so that's really all that we can do from a county perspective to regulate e-bikes, because otherwise the state vehicle code regulates them. The state vehicle code defines bikes as personal property, not a vehicle, and so for that reason, you don't currently need a license. And the police cannot confiscate a bike if you get into an accident with it. So those are things that our state legislators are looking at. I believe there is a bill. I can't remember exactly the number, but that would require a license to ride an e-bike, and some training involved with that. I know that CHP, the Highway Patrol, has also gotten increased funding from the state to step up their enforcement and education around e-bike usage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Looking again at your option B here, I know costs.
I know the cost would be more, but I like the segregation of the two ways for bicycles. But what's the chances of moving the curb over to that line where the pedestrians are? So then the bicycles actually have a delineation. Is there just that curb is enough barrier to keep them from encroaching in the people walk and jog area?
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously it's more money. I understand that. But it would separate it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a fairly ideal solution. I agree that you would just have the sort of bikeway as its own separate segment with the curb still
Yeah.
separating bikes from pedestrians. Yeah, that's a good long range
It's a good
possibility.
it's a good safety issue
Yeah.
as I ride on there, and I basically do the option B when I ride,
Mhm.
but you have people walking
Right.
and jogging, and then the bicycles coming.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the issue with the keep right is that's keep right for everyone.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and so then you have folks walking as close to the curb as possible, which means now a bike is going faster, is going to swerve around them into oncoming pedestrians.
Coming off of the curb.
Yeah. So,
Thank you. Option B, isn't that similar to how in front of the boardwalk is right now? It's got a
Mhm.
bike. And then those black rubber dividers into the traffic. So
Yeah.
along the front of the boardwalk, starting at the Dream Inn,
mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
all the way to the River Bridge, so that bike path is really used.
Yeah.
So that's it's the same as option B, I believe.
So yeah, the comment was that option B looks a lot like the boardwalk. I would say you're right, except a curb is dividing the bike lanes, right? Because in the board at the boardwalk, both directions of the bike lane are in the street effectively, and then there's a large rubber divider between the bike lanes and the cars. And I think in some cases, there's even some parking there that divides them. In this case, we do have the curb to deal with. And I mean, to your point, long range, could be an option to, move the curb relative to the bike lanes. But as far as something we can do this year, or, really that's the goal, to do something here in the short term, it would be, I think, out of reach to move the curb. Then you're talking about, hundreds of thousands or $1 million. Yeah.
There. Two comments. One is, it seems like the real environment is there are cars and there are people and there are bicycles going everywhere,
Mhm.
every direction, every speed. And it really comes down to bicycles. I mean, the easiest way is to ban the bicycles, but so that leads to point two. It is since you can't control who rides bicycles, what they do, someone needs to call up somebody you can in the state. I mean, these kids are very young. They're totally out of control, ripping down Portola the other night, three in the center of the road, texting and laughing and weaving everywhere. It's just like, I'm surprised we haven't had 100 get killed, right? And also, okay, but going back to this thing, like my wife has bad hips, and I'm worried that if she just gets bumped by one of these guys, or even myself, they zip by, you just turn this way, you're going to get clobbered, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's a really pretty serious risk. And if you look at the total number of people on the East Cliff, there's a lot walking and there's a fair number of cars who aren't in control. So it's really only the bicycles who are out of control. And spending mega bucks on, I don't know what the count is, doesn't really seem worth it. And I especially don't think the bicycle people are going to heed anything you do anyway, right? Already they hop on the curb, they go down the curb, they go on the, you've been there, you've seen it. So anyway, that's my 2 cents there.
Should I assume that's a vote for option C?
Well, I
mean,
like, yes,
at least
I
we're
like
getting-
option C because it isolates the people going the other way, right? I think that separates them too, and they can't turn around, but I don't know if you can control them at all, really, unless you have some kind of enforcement or something.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly ask CHP to do some enforcement out there. I mean, in fact, you know, what option C is, I mean, another variation of this could just be, rather than an actual bike lane going eastbound, is to put sharrows in the street, but you know, then you're still giving a little bit more priority to cars. And anyway, so that, and it's very much like is done on Pacific Avenue, right, downtown, which has the contraflow bike lane, and then the street has bike sharrows in it and is shared by cars and bikes. But I mean, to your point, this would at least get bikes off of the sidewalk portion.
Didn't you say you were banning the bikes on the sidewalk?
Yes.
So if you made it one way for bicyclists and they not be allowed on asphalt or the
Right.
granite path.
Right, yeah, so I mean, so bikes are not, so the current ordinance that bans bikes from sidewalks, technically East Cliff Walkway is a mixed use path. It's not a sidewalk under those definitions, and so it doesn't apply to this specific area.
Could be made a sidewalk.
But yeah, I mean, I think if we had a good solution for bikes, where they should, how they should use the area, then that's certainly something we could pursue.
And that was my question. So if it's B or C, then cyclists would only be allowed in the bike lanes and not on the pedestrian walkway.
Right, yeah.
There would be a rule.
Right.
So there would just be walkers and strollers and people walking, bikes on the street.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
No
I mean,
more bikes on the sidewalk.
Right, so
Okay,
even.
for both, for B and C.
Right, yeah, I mean, so even for option B, we could have more
Right.
explicit signage that says, you know, bikes.
No
stay in the
bikes
bike
on the
lane,
sidewalk.
fines for, you
Mhm.
know, using the
Okay,
pedestrian.
yeah. Okay, that was my question. I think it was answered enough. Thanks. Thank you.
Manu, about 3 weeks ago, I saw my first sign of highway patrol enforcement. 3 adults on e-bikes pulled over. So I think you gotta call the CHP. I know they're busy, but they know this is a problem.
I mean, and especially if you can tell them, hey, I see the same group of young adults every night at 8 o'clock on Portola riding like, you know, crazy animals on sidewalks in the middle of the street, et cetera. I mean, heck, then they know, okay, we'll go out there between, you know, 7 and 9 PM and see if we can do some enforcement. I think you're. Well, actually, I'll take a couple questions from online. I know you folks have had your hands up. So, JC, want to go ahead and unmute yourself? Let's see.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I think that a lot of this conversation related to bike safety really comes down to like the behavior of folks on e-bikes, which is one extreme. But as somebody who like lives, you know, not even a half a block from East Cliff and walk it 4 or 5 times a day, the majority of the bikers that I see on that East Cliff Parkway are 3 or 4-year-olds learning to ride their first bike with their parent for the first time. It's 7 or 8-year-olds who are testing their independence by going to Point Market and picking up a burrito for their mom. You know, it's kids like that, or it's like 70 or 80-year-olds who, you know, wear 3 sweaters and bike down to the hook to see how the surf is that day. So I really feel like it's important to like not demonize an entire population of bikes on East Cliff because of the behavior of some outliers, which seem to be predominantly e-bikes and like e-bike riders in a certain demographic age group. And so I think if you actually like looked at the data of like who's using East Cliff, you know, it's mostly kids, it's families, it's, you know, children testing a little bit of independence. You know, it's a kid learning to, you know, to do this for the first time. The majority of like serious cyclers use the bike lane. Other folks are on kids' bikes, cruisers, and going pretty moderately. So I really do feel like we need to take a balanced approach and not like over-index because of a few bad actors.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that point, JC. And that's actually precisely why with this ordinance regulating e-bikes and keeping them off of sidewalks, we didn't make it apply to all bikes because, I mean, as you point out, we don't want to ban kids learning to ride a bike from, you know, the safe space on the sidewalk. Ernesto? Go ahead. Ernesto, if you're there, go ahead and unmute. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. I just had a question for option B or C. Is there any consideration for adding any kind of flex post or barriers in between the car and the bike lane for these options?
In the street. We could potentially look at that. I mean, I think you need to have 2 feet of buffer before you add a flex post. So for example, like is on Ocean Street and Water Street in the city of Santa Cruz there as you come down from Branch of 40. So I think it'd be just a matter of yeah, how much space we have, but we could look at that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good improvement, especially to encourage people to be on the bike lane and kind of stay out of the pedestrian way. I think that would be a good option, whether option B or C, depending on what's available there.
Great. Thank you for that suggestion.
There were flex posts at one time. That didn't last very long.
Okay. Well, thanks for the history. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Related to this, I was
Wondering if there is a dedicated CHP officer who circulates in the Live Oak area, local streets and arterials at any one given time, or do they just respond to calls to come out?
So they are generally circulating. Yeah, I think we have 3 CHP officers on duty for the whole county at any one given time. So it is a pretty large beat. So usually if there's a problem area, they need to be told, right, to come do some specific enforcement. For example, as we're going to talk about Schwann Lake and Twin Lakes Beach there next, right? There's that area where people sometimes park in the bike lane along the cliff. And so I repeatedly call them out and tell them, hey, get out there and do some enforcement. We have folks, especially on weekends when we know that's going to be an issue. And so they go out and we'll ticket. We are also looking then at how do we at least put some bike symbols in that lane so it's obvious to folks that can't park there.
So 3 officers for the whole county, and does that include the freeways and highways too?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's surprisingly low, I just have to say, sadly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
all 604 square miles,
CHP. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. One more question on this.
I have 2 things. What are other, like, what's Westcliff doing about this? I haven't been over there lately. And then Pacific Grove, Monterey has that whole mixed trail. And I, several years ago, noticed how they were able to separate pedestrians and bicyclists. That was before the e-bikes. I regularly am a pedestrian and a bicyclist. And in my head, I think I'm doing option B all the time. I don't even see how right now it's option A. And maybe because for a while now it hasn't been marked as such. With option A, where are the pedestrians? Would you go back to B? On B, look how great that, you know, if we could always go west in that bike lane, but not everybody does if you're on a bike. And if we really had that lane to go east, it would work. But nothing teaches us to do that. I have a really hard time riding east because there'll be like groups of 5 or 6 pedestrians with their dogs, strollers, families. And I have to, you know, I don't ring my bell at them to move over. They don't, there's no understanding of how to use the mixed trail or pathway.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody knows what to do.
I think you're saying.
And to me, I feel like pedestrians are like a big problem.
Mhm.
And when I'm a pedestrian, I stay over by the fence
Right.
because that's my understanding is where pedestrians belong over there.
Yeah.
But nobody has taught anybody what to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I think as the current, even if assuming that the existing striping was up to date, as you can see with keep right, that doesn't tell you anything about separation of bikes and pedestrians, right? And so hence this proposal, which is to more clearly demarcate separation between the two. And we could even look at putting up some flex posts between the bike lane and the pedestrians and signage. And again, look at enforcing with fines to make sure people are staying apart. You asked what other regions are doing. I know that particularly down in Southern California, along some of their beach trails, they do have more strict enforcement of separation between bikes and pedestrians, particularly during busy hours.
Thank you.
I just see a little confusion with the option B here with the bike lanes being reversed from what,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the right, you're going that way.
Yep.
On the left, you're coming this way.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I mean, and even there's the argument that, people won't be as safe if they're walking with their back to bikes coming up behind them, right? And so there is an argument to be made to put the contraflow lane in the street and eastbound bike traffic on the pathway. That's something we could consider as well.
Hi, back when East Cliff was a two-way street,
Mm-hmm.
there was never this kind of issue. But now that it's a one-way street, it's obviously different with the e-bikes and stuff like that. But I can see with Measure C, I think it was, where there's a that one. East Cliff is a narrow drive street anyway. So I'm not sure how wide a bike lane has to be, but it's going to take these cars who drive those, which usually aren't very local cars, especially in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
to be very good drivers and not to hit these people. I mean, it's going to be a narrow lane because that street is narrow anyway.
Yeah.
So that could be a concern.
I hear you. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is that the diagram doesn't show for the bikes that are going west, that there are cars on that side that park. And those are also the avenues that come onto East Cliff Drive. So it's really kind of creating a new crisis
Mm-hmm.
because the cars back up, they park diagonally,
Mm-hmm.
and then people come off the avenues only looking at the water
Mm-hmm.
and forgetting that it's a street.
That's
So I
true.
just want to add that.
Yeah.
I drive it every day, multiple
Yeah.
times too.
Yeah, good point.
And I've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Take you back to my idea on B of moving the asphalt. I think B is a good choice for an interim
Mm-hmm.
with taking, again, as Kevin was saying, it's narrow.
Mm-hmm.
So do B right away because we have the funds to do that possibly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the long term is switch to a modified C instead of putting the lane off to the right-hand side or left-hand side of the car traffic, is
Mm-hmm.
move that curve over the one space and
Right.
put both bike lanes on one side.
Right. Okay, great. Yeah.
I'm leaving Venus.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you everyone for the feedback. Good discussion. I've got one last topic to touch on here, which is the East Cliff 9th through 12th improvements. Another issue of sort of coastal access and bike and pedestrian safety. So back in the days of redevelopment, the county actually extensively studied how to put a sidewalk here around Schwann Lake, connecting basically 12th Avenue to 9th Avenue. And this was actually part of, this entire coastal frontage area. And so we all know that the 7th Avenue area got redone, right? You can see the roundabout there in this plan. And of course, this basically ends at 7th. But the rest of the connection was studied extensively. There, you know, the question is, how can we revive this? The option that was sort of the preferred option that was looked at the most was really building a pretty significant pier system along the lake there, and a larger sidewalk, boardwalk area for bikes and pedestrians to use. This ran into a couple of challenges around, you know, obviously it could be expensive, but also the Coastal Commission had concerns with the sensitive habitat. And more practically, there's a sewer main, the force main that runs pretty much in this very spot. And so there could be some risks to trying to drill these large piers in here. So one alternative that was looked at as well is doing basically just a sidewalk on both sides. So a retaining wall along the where the homes are, and putting a sidewalk beneath that, and then also a standard size sidewalk on the lake part of or the lake side of the road, and standard bike lanes as well, very much where they are now. So I'm happy to, this is right now sort of just a placeholder, you know, get your quick feedback on this. You know, would folks be interested in seeing just sort of that more basic improvement move forward? Or does it have to be the pier model here? You know, of course, the other component of this is just sort of coastal resilience, as I think many of you have seen. That area did flood significantly in the last couple of winters. And so we are looking right now at how do we, with all our low-lying areas, so Schwann Lake, Corcoran Lagoon, and Morin Lake, you know, what would it take to ultimately make those roadways more resilient? And it probably means a little bit of a bridge there, so that during those high tide events, the water can flow under the road rather than over it and eroding the roadbed. Thoughts? I'm going to go to Toby first here.
Hi, my name is Toby Goddard. I've been advocating for this vital connection between Live Oak and Santa Cruz for as long as I've lived in my house, which is 37 years. And as you all know, I'm going to take a minute or two of your time. When people love to walk along the beach isn't always, you can't get there in the winter or in summers at high tide when the sand has been dragged out like it has been for the last few years. So pedestrians who want to go either from Santa Cruz to the farmer's market or to the harbor are forced to walk on the street. Mana, you mentioned it's a busy roadway. There are 15,000 cars or more now that travel that roadway, and there's no safe pedestrian way. All I want to say is keep the eye on the goal here, and the goal is to connect 12th Avenue all the way to 9th. If you talk about something on the east side of the road, which is where the cliff is, and by the way, a big thanks to the Public Works crew who really shaved back that vegetation this year, more so than ever. So we have a fighting chance walking against traffic. They really bit the vegetation back. So, but the goal is to connect. It's not just to get from Prospect down to that little piece of beach. It's to be able, this was the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail that has been usurped by the rail trail. This is the old route. This is where people want to bike ride. This is where people want to walk. They want to go by the ocean. They want to come between Santa Cruz into Live Oak and make the connection so they can walk on to the all the way to the hook.
Right.
And so to answer your question, then I'll stop. There are much simpler solutions than a big cantilevered engineered pier in your sewer main kind of solution. It's only 1,500 feet.
Mhm.
It's less than a third of a mile. Half of that 1,500 feet is actually suitable for a sidewalk right now. As you make that turn, you go from getting out from under the eucalyptus,
Mhm.
which is kind of a dead zone in terms of habitat. And then you get into the ice plant. And when you make that turn from there all the way to Ninth, it's level and wide. So it's a fallacy to think that this is that challenging. There are parts, although I will say, that break off steeply, but that can be easily solved with a far less expensive
Mhm.
project that meets all of today's design criteria for ADA.
Yeah, yeah.
So if I could say, put your eyes on making the connection, and I will finish with how frigging scary walking down the east side of that road is. Because I don't know if you've seen how many of the steps that go down to the roadway there that have been smashed by cars that lose control as who said they're looking at the ocean? They're looking at the ocean, or they're doing something, and they go around and physics takes over and the cars go up on the bank.
Yeah.
And so putting a walkway on that is, I think, not a solution.
Yeah.
And it doesn't connect.
So-
So thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for the time. I'll continue. You'll see me again.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, and so, I was trying to dig through the box, so because this was done back in, the old days of 2010, most of the planning work that's been done is on paper, and so, I was trying to find the diagram, but an alternative was studied to just put a basic sidewalk on both sides, which I think would provide the connection that you're looking for and be a more manageable project, so, yeah, I'm hearing.
Thanks for keeping
Sure.
focus on.
Yeah,
You have my vote for what you described early
okay.
before Toby got up and gave his impassioned talk. I think that's a great idea. Simple
Mhm.
on each side. And the best thing about it is that it leaves the door open also for the coastal resilient,
Mhm.
if you're doing what's right for East Cliff at 26 or at Corcoran or here. And so I like that one. I'd like to see you move forward on that bicycle or sidewalks both sides.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, sorry, Michael, did you want to say something too?
With regard to the lagoons and the roads crossing the lagoons, we have to keep in mind in the long term, those have to be raised. And especially Corcoran Lagoon, where it gets washed out every year, that has to be raised up all the way across there. Allow the lagoon to function as a lagoon. Moran Lagoon needs to be opened up to function as a lagoon. Same thing with Schwann Lagoon. For the habitat and for the human use of it, we need long bridges.
Yeah. Yeah.
Causeways.
Yeah, yeah, and we have initiated that process of, of course, that in government speak means a study, but at least that study is actually funded and starting now effectively. The Coastal Commission even contributed, and Coastal Conservancy have helped to fund that because the last couple of winters have demonstrated that is a fairly urgent project. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Frank Cook. I live on 12th Avenue. I've been there for 43 years. And I don't disagree with what Toby's saying. I think at best, you're probably going to be lucky to get a sidewalk on one side of the street. I don't see how two sides are possible. The houses that abut East Cliff right now, all of the past property line is falling down. If you drive by, you can see it's collapsed on 3 or 4 units. The county assumes no responsibility for this. They said this is your problem. So I don't see that is going to be resolved cheaply. I mean, you're talking, I don't know how many millions of dollars to do the whole project, but you might have to walk away with just getting one side of it done.
And you're talking about further up around the curve there?
Well, I'm talking as you leave the beach
Yeah.
and you're heading up on the incline where everybody likes to speed and make noise. On the right-hand side, the houses there,
Mhm.
some have steps coming down. A lot of them have the bank that was supporting everything has collapsed.
Mhm.
And my neighbor across the street is, having to deal with that right now. And the county just says, not our difficulty.
Mhm.
Or if it is our difficulty, we're not going to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, it is, there is a fair amount of public right of way in there, so ultimately if we put a sidewalk there, it would be a, significant retaining wall as well, and hopefully that would address the problem.
It would be significant.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Just a quick question, it's on that side where the retaining wall is built. Do you know approximately how far in on the cliff side?
How far on the cliff side there, the wall side, how far would the retaining wall go in from the road existing? Do you have any ballpark guess?
5 to 7 feet.
Okay, so quite a bit of that is county property, not private property.
Yeah, it's actually.
So the people that have their stairs going down now, they would lose portion of their stairs.
Mhm.
Like the one, I compliment whoever complained and got it done, the one that had encroached all the way into the bike lane.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's actually farther up than that point.
Yeah, or perhaps we could look at a solution like along Monterey Avenue there in Capitola, where folks have kind of built stairs into the sidewalk. Maybe there could be some cost sharing in the project if they wanted to maintain access of some kind. Yeah. All right, I think we've exhausted that topic. One final news flash, and then I'm happy to take any other questions on unrelated topics, but we do have groundbreaking for Floral Park next Monday at noon. So this has been made possible thanks to the dedication and passion of a lot of the residents out there. So Floral Park is along 38th Avenue and Floral, kind of in the heart of Pleasure Point. Residents raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. There were also some generous foundation grants. And we also put about $100,000 of transient occupancy taxes to making this park finally happen. And so there'll be a groundbreaking next Monday. And then it is, since it's largely play equipment and a new rubberized surface, there'll be sort of a ocean theme with some sea stars and rocks, etc. Should happen pretty quickly. We expect to get it done within 3 to 4 months. So come on out. Well, I'm happy to take any other questions or stick around and talk to folks one-on-one, or you're welcome to email the office at first.district@santacruzcounty.gov.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sure. Yeah, Paige.
You led the meeting talking about FEMA funds and the county.
You led the meeting talking about FEMA funds, and they owe the county a lot of money.
Mhm.
I know the storm that happened in February was declared a disaster by FEMA. For Live Oak specifically, do you have any plans for that money, or do you know when you're going to get it, or how does that work?
So that money is really to do repair work, right? So it's
Okay.
not like, oh yeah, here's whatever, here's $10 million, spend it however you want. It's very specific. I mean, for example, at Morin Lake, we were doing the repairs along, we repaired that split rail fence on the interior side of the
I
lake,
see.
right? So that's something where we have to have a representative from FEMA come out, see where the damage has been done, see where we're going to make the repair. We actually did that repair. It got destroyed the next year, and we're still haven't been paid anything from FEMA, right?
Yeah.
Like the claim has been validated and we'll get the money sometime, but we just don't know exactly
Yeah.
when.
So I just don't know how that process works. So they just say it's declared a disaster and then you submit receipts, or do they say, oh, we're going to give you $50,000?
Yes, it's all
You just submit receipts.
submit
Okay,
receipts
thank
kind
you.
of stuff. And then it's not like they pay you as soon as you submit your receipt. It could be anywhere from 5 to 10 years. I mean, we're still waiting for reimbursement on the CZU fire. And of course, then because they don't have enough money to go around for the whole country, they tend to fight over what they actually want to reimburse. So for example, at the CZU fire, they're saying, oh, actually, we don't want to pay for removal of woody debris, like logs across the roadway. So, yeah. All right. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm gonna see you tomorrow.
Okay, great.